the core of the strategies that he taught me were really around radical simplification of your business and then premium pricing and client enrollment. So I changed the way that I saw my value completely. Instead of thinking about the deliverables and the hard assets that I was creating for the clients, I focused on their transformation and where they were going and what results that they wanted, like 6-figure launches and a brand that really felt worthy of their legacy. And those kinds of long-term, big, overarching desires that the clients that I was working with had. And I started speaking to those and I started showing up on sales calls with conviction and as a brand and thought partner with them, like asking them the deeper questions no one was asking. Instead of me presenting these little cookie cutter packages that I had come up with on the back of a napkin, we co-created a package together that was actually designed to get them all the way to their goal.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Brazen and Bold. Today, I am so lucky to feature the incredible duo, the go-to experts and powerhouses behind charging your worth, and the leaders of Self-Made. Welcome to Brazen and Bold, Chris and Julie.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you both. And anybody who's been listening to the show for a few minutes is aware that Chris joined us on our original recording date just a while back. We were supposed to have both of you and your geniuses combined. Julie had something come up that took her away from the office, and we were able to interview Chris. It was an excellent episode that took us on some twists and turns of really setting the foundation, I think, and the perfect stage for what we want to talk about today. The jumping off point was understanding your own value, tapping into loving yourself so that you can know your worth. And I think that this follow-up is going to be an excellent session with the two of you, really talking about what it looks like to charge your worth now that you've identified it. Would you guys, starting off with Julie, tell us a little bit about your background and what got you to this point in Self-Made and kind of helped you, I guess, develop what it is that you offer your audience?
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, I was a marketing exec in the world of medical devices. That's kind of where I started my entrepreneurial journey. I loved the startup environment. I loved the feeling of being with a really talented group of A players, creating something of value. And when that company was acquired by a larger company, I thought, this is my chance. I'm going to start my own company. So I did a windy path through the world of online digital marketing. I started an Instagram marketing agency back in 2013 when those really polished, curated photos were in style, where you had the teacup or the coffee cup and you had your notebook and you were writing in your notebook, taking those posed pictures. And we did high-end brand shoots. We did a lot of copywriting for our clients. And I loved it, but I really wanted to focus in on my zone of genius, and that was copywriting. And so I ended up selling my half of the business to my business partner and then going into business for myself. Met Chris a few years later, and now we've combined forces to create Self-Made, combining the branding, messaging, and marketing that our clients need with the high ticket sales. And of course, the self-love stuff that you guys talked about last time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's a cool journey and also very brave. It sounds like it's been just over 12 years that you've been on this path as a self-made woman of your own right, basically taking that leap when you could have gone the stay the route, stay the course, do the safe thing. You went bold. What gave you the courage to do that, Julie?
Nobody's ever asked me that question before. I think it was just passion for freedom, passion for living a creative life. I felt like I had to really stay in a box when I was working in corporate, and obviously for good reason, but I wanted creative freedom. And that was really my driving force for creating my own company.
Okay. Your desire for freedom outweighed your desire for safety is what I'm hearing.
Exactly. Yes.
That's so powerful. Thank you for sharing. All right, Mr. Chris Kenney, we've already heard from you, but this might be the first time a couple people on the show have. So you're interesting enough. I'll hear it again. Tell us a little bit about what you hear.
Yeah, I've been in the coaching industry for 17 years. Got burned out in corporate America. I was a really successful salesperson in corporate, but I just kind of hit the ceiling. I didn't want to manage people. inside of that company. I didn't want to manage a sales team, so I pretty much had no other direction to go than to start a company of my own. I did that 17 years ago. Started out, and in my first year, I did 263,000 in sales as a coach. Didn't really know my way around the coaching business at all. And what I didn't know at the time is that performance had already put me in the top 1% of all coaches. So taking that expertise that brought me the 263K, changed my focus, rebranded myself a couple of times, ended up noticing that the clients that I was teaching high ticket sales to were the clients that were crushing it. So I niched myself into the coach market, and then I niched myself further inside of that market to be, not only do I work with coaches, but I am a high ticket sales mentor for coaches. So we teach people how to position, package, and sell premium services. So services that are 10,000 and beyond. Sometimes a person will come in and they'll say, hey, I've got a program. It's 3K. What do I need to do in order to make this thing worth 10,000? Sometimes it's already worth 10,000 and they're not seeing it. Sometimes there's positioning that needs to be done. Sometimes there's messaging that needs to be done. There's a skill set involved in how to sell high ticket coaching services. It's completely different than selling anything else. So I'm really driven to help people do this because it's my belief that in order to build, if you want a 7-figure brand, you need premium services. You need a high ticket advantage. You need something that you can sell for high ticket. Because, if you look at it, if you had 20 people paying you 50K, that's $1 million. If you had 50 people paying you 20K, that's $1 million. So the model gets easier and easier if you're willing to do the work on yourself, to believe in yourself at a level that says, hey, not only can I command this price, but I can actually get it. And, having high ticket advantage is super, super, super important. But let's not ignore, of course, the self-love stuff, because I don't believe that we ever perform at a level that exceeds what we believe about ourselves. We're not going to perform at a level that exceeds what we believe about ourselves. If you, at the core of your being, don't think you're worth more than 500 grand, you're not going to sell more than 500 grand. So part of the work is believing in yourself. And then once you've got self-belief, then we can come in with things like strategy, positioning, messaging, selling, conversion events, and all those things. So I feel like I've digressed, but the bottom line is it took me from 2008 to 2020 to hit 7 figures. And I hit 7 figures in 2020 with Julie's help, repositioned myself, got my messaging in order. I already had the skill set for how to sell high ticket, but we did some work inside of the company in terms of getting me in front of the right people, which I think is really important work. And then hit 7 figures back in 2020. COVID was actually really good because COVID was the thing that caused me to move from offline marketing to online marketing. And when I went online, I massively exploded the business and haven't looked back since.
All right. So it's been basically 5 years for you. The journey of your self-employment and your own business and branding started just a few years ahead of Julie's before you met. And in the last 5 years, it sounds like you shattered a ceiling. And
you shattered the $1 million ceiling that everybody, I wouldn't say everybody wants, but a lot of people want. And that has it's completely shifted business for us, and it's shifted how I look at money. It's shifted how I look at success. It's shifted how I look at what's important. It's changed everything, and it's available to everyone. That's the first thing they need to believe, is that it's possible.
Okay. I love that. And both of you have taken a few bold and unapologetic steps moving into what you're doing now. I want to know, as you've worked together over the last few years, what is the biggest transformation story? And you guys, we didn't talk about this beforehand, so maybe you have to convene a little bit quickly, but what's the biggest transformation story that you can share about a client where you've seen someone just have this massive breakthrough, the most wild kind of breakout success? You're nodding your heads. You probably each have 1 or 2 ideas come to mind. You can get consent from any of these people to share their stories. So give us a code word, like the dog groomer, wink, wink. But I want to know this transformation story. And what you think the key kind of shifts that were made to get this client there?
Yeah, well, I would start with myself. I was actually a client of Chris's before we joined forces and, created Self-Made. And at the time that I met him, I had just started exceeding 10K months in my new company and was really looking for what's that path to seven figures. At the time, $1 million was just a number I picked out of the air. It sounded like a lot of money. I wanted to hit that goal just because. And I was like, how would I even get there? Because at 10K months, I'm already completely overwhelmed, underwater, maxed out, burnt out, all the things, and had no idea that it was even possible, but I believed that he could help me get there. So over the course of 2 years, I went from 90K to 650 in my company, and I completely blew my own mind. And I felt like the core of the strategies that he taught me were really around radical simplification of your business and then premium pricing and client enrollment. So I changed the way that I saw my value completely. Instead of thinking about the deliverables and the hard assets that I was creating for the clients, I focused on their transformation and where they were going and what results that they wanted, like 6-figure launches and, a brand that really felt worthy of their legacy and those kinds of long-term, big, overarching desires that the clients that I was working with had. And I started speaking to those, and I started showing up on sales calls with conviction and help, and as a brand and thought partner with them, like asking them the deeper questions no one was asking. And together we would, instead of me presenting these little cookie cutter packages that I had come up with on the back of a napkin, we co-created a package together that was actually designed to get them all the way to their goal. So this pricing strategy, this new packaging strategy, combined with a really powerful enrollment conversation that made me feel like I was the leader of the conversation and that I was going to show them and help them understand their needs and, what it would be, what the investment would be to actually give them those. The business just exploded. And it was the most exciting 2 years I think I've had ever.
I'm obsessed with that. I love that. I love cheering on female founders. I mean, listen, you're welcome to the call, Chris. We like you, and we're not going to discriminate against anybody, but it's so fun to hear this story from you, especially as a fellow creative. And I'm sure that resonates with a lot of people. A lot of our listeners are creatives who work in outside the box businesses. And to hear that you were doing a solid 90,000 a year, like that's a great business. And you're overwhelmed with that. And it was a lot for you. And man, we all understand that if we're listening to this as a founder or somebody who runs a team. And then to hear that you took that and went to 650 within 2 years, it's not just mind blowing to you. That's pretty impressive. I love that. Now you got this coach who's now your partner in this self-made situation. So Chris, I want to hear maybe from your perspective, and also if there's another client, thanks for outing yourself. There was this that we know in marketing that we'll share. And she has a really awesome outfit and necklace on for those of you who are just listening in and don't say, but yeah, so we won't identify too much about her, but her name is Julie C. We'll keep the rest anonymous. Anyway, Chris, tell us a little bit more about this Julie C., the client that you saw such explosive growth with. And then maybe what were some of the key levers you saw moved to get her there?
Well, first of all, being willing to step in, being willing to take the risk. That is the thing that I remember most about Julie when we started. And if what we're doing right now is outing Julie, I don't want to underscore how big the risk was that she took. And I would say that 99% of the population wouldn't take the risk. But that's what makes Julie different. Like, I sold her a program that was $60,000. It was $5,000 a month. And Julie, when she said yes to that contract, literally had about $50 in her checking account. She had $50 pardon my French. Listen, hear what I'm about to say. She had $50. I said, how much is in your checking account? She said, I have $50. She said, I have 50. That's what she said. I said, 1,000? No, she said dollars. And I said, okay, so we got dinner covered and we got to work on breakfast. And she said, yes. She notified Stripe. I think it was Stripe. She took out a loan for $5,000. That paid for her first month with me. That month, we created $22,500, and we never looked back. Why? Because she knew the power of faith. She knew the power of needing to move forward when she couldn't see the whole path. She knew in her body that this was the right decision, and she didn't let her mind take her out. She knew in her body, this is the thing I need to do, and I'm not going to let my mind take me out. Most people, they make those decisions up here in their mind. Your mind houses your ego. Your ego is your current sense of self. Your current sense of self is going to fight for its life. So the mind can't figure it out. The mind is going to say no. The mind is going to run from the transformation. The ego is conditioned to do that. So whenever somebody's making a decision like this, I say, trust your body, trust your intuition. How does it feel in here? How does it feel in your solar plexus? How does it feel in your abdomen? Your body knows. And that's how I feel about it. Julie was willing to take the risk. She never questioned the coaching. She never questioned the process. She just did what I asked her to do. And whenever her shit would come up, I would navigate her through it. And we came in with a very specific target. The very specific target was, she said, what I want is to learn how to sell a $50,000 copywriting package. And I will say this to you, Heather. I said it to Julie, and I say it to anybody that shows up in my space. If you spend 12 months with me, and you have a target that is that specific, I want to learn how to sell a $50,000 package. I have, and I'll say this out loud, I have never had a situation where I have not been able to do that. But that means a person needs to be willing to step in. They need to be willing to take the risk. They need to be willing to do what is being suggested. They have to be open. And as the learning is showing up, because there's always learning, you have to have the mindset that says everything that shows up in my space is either a win or a learn. It's either a win or a learn. We're either getting the contract or we're learning something that we need that will allow us to get the next one. And you've got to be willing to stick with it. Some people, it takes 30 days. Some people, it takes 90 days. Some people, I've had people that it takes 6 months. But man, once you get it, you can't unget it. You can't unget it. That's why these programs are 12 months. They're 12 months because we're reconditioning your belief system. We might be rebranding you. We might be redoing your messaging. We might be redoing positioning and all these different things. But that being said, you've got to be willing to do the work. You've got to be willing to go through the repetitions. You're not used to selling something that's $50,000 or $10,000 or $25,000. That's going to take some reps, and be willing to go through the reps. But if we go through the reps and you're recording your enrollment conversations, you're sending them over to me, we're working on your offers, we're working on your selling, we're working on how you're positioned so that you're attracting the right people in, there's no way we're going to miss. And I believe that inside my heart and my freaking soul. We're not going to miss. There's no way somebody can spend 12 months in my space focused on selling one high ticket program and to have us not get that done. And that's what I mean. When you approach it like that, because there's people out there listening, and I just want to ask all of you a question. Do you think I could teach you how to sell something for $25,000 if you're not selling something for $25,000? And if you think I can, then you got to get in touch, because once you learn it, you can unlearn it and you'll never revert back. And that was what happened with Julie. We got our first one within 6 weeks. We did 22,000 in the first 30 days. That was enough to have her go, hey, I can't wait to pay this guy another $5,000. You know what I mean? Like, we got rolling and we got some momentum, but it started with the decision. It started with being willing to take the risk. It started with being willing to move in faith. And the reason, let me say one more thing on this. And I know I feel like I'm on a bit of a rant on this because it's so important to understand this, is it requires faith because your mind doesn't have a frame of reference for what it is you want to create. So in other words, if you're trying to create $1 million for the first time, you've never created $1 million. Your mind has no frame of reference for $1 million and for what it looks like. When you start thinking about it, your mind can't figure it out. You know why? Because your mind doesn't have any data to support that you're going to make $1 million. Why? Because the data's not there. That's why you're hiring me. That's why it takes faith. You're not going to figure it out. It's going to feel counterintuitive. It's going to feel heavy. It's going to feel risky. It's going to feel counterintuitive. It's going to make you want to throw up. It's going to feel like that. And are you willing to step in when it feels like that? Because I'm here to train you on how to navigate through that. But here's what people want. They want the how before they make the decision. But that's not how it works. You make the decision and then the how shows up. You see what I'm saying? They want the how for the money. Oh, I need to have the how before I can take action. I need to have the how before I can spend the money. That's not going to happen. Because if you had the how, you wouldn't have to make the hire. You don't have the how. It's being willing to move forward when you don't have the how.
And I think that this is applicable. You know, let's even go to one of my best friends who is a mentor of mine, whether or not she knows it just by how she lives her life. She always says to me, focus on the what, not the how, because you can get caught up in so many details. And this is where people swap before they even exit the gate. We interviewed someone recently and he's talking about how he pulled up to a publisher with a book that he was ready to launch and he almost didn't get out of the car. He just couldn't see how he could get this book out to the masses. And he's like, I just had to open the car door. I didn't know what was after the car door, but I opened the car door. And this is kind of what you're describing here. Listen, I personally had a little bit of a baby panic attack live on camera just now when you said Julie had $50 in her bank account. I've had more than $50 in my bank account since I was 10. And I know Julie has a child and I know Julie has a life.
Let me tell you something. Yeah. $50. I got to say one more thing here, and it makes me emotional because I since, 2 years later, it was 2 years later, I fell in love with her and I didn't know that was coming. We weren't romantic when she hired me. We didn't have eyes on each other when we hired each other. We were strictly business. And we went for 2 years. But what she told me later was when she hired me, or when the first thing that happened was I hired her, because Julie writes like copy, the best freaking copy that I've ever seen in the industry. She is a gifted, creative conversion copywriter. Tremendous, right? I was taking my business online. I hired her for a sales page, and it was in December. For a sales page, and she gave the damn thing away. She gave it away. She sold it to me for $3,000, right? That was a $15,000 sales page without question. I didn't know that at the time, but she wrote me this sales page. I paid her the $3,000, and she later told me that it was that $3,000 that gave Christmas to her daughter.
Wow. Yeah.
Because if she didn't get that $3,000, she had nothing for Christmas gifts. And so listen, when I hear people telling me stories around where they're at and why they can't take action, listen, man, it's hard to compare to that. Yeah. The power that it took, the strength that it took, the faith that it took, and the human being that is Julie Cabezas is why she was able to go to $600,000. Yeah. She's wired that way. She just needed somebody to pull it out of her. And there's so many people out there that miss that opportunity because they're tied up in how they're going to create money. The how shows up after the choice. Make the decision, make the investment, allow the how to show up after that. That's how it works. I wish it was different because I'd be able to sell 30 million a year if everybody believed that.
Right. What you're describing as well, the ability to take inspired action in the face of perhaps what feels like every odd against you in this case is, like you mentioned, 1% of the population has the ability to even see that they can do that, to open the door, to get out of the car. It's scary. It's gut wrenching. Like you said, if this choice doesn't make you feel like you're going to vomit, You're not going anywhere. I can't imagine, if we think about what it takes to be an entrepreneur, and a lot of people listening to this are founders, entrepreneurs, leading businesses, mostly creatives. I've got some questions about what this means for people who don't sell a high ticket offer, or people who don't have, because I'm sitting here, I listen, here I am, devil's advocate. I listen from all the different angles, and I'm thinking, well, I don't sell a coaching program. I am not a coach. I'm a salon owner, or I'm a stylist. Everybody is selling something, and the thing they're selling is themselves. It doesn't matter what it is they're selling. If you are a salon owner, a business coach, an author, I don't care. You're selling yourself, right? So thinking about what type of mental fortitude and some sort of, like you mentioned, faith, belief in yourself, or just sheer power it takes to take that first step is more than most people possess in their entire lives, let alone in the ability to do it in a moment. So it's very, very difficult. And that's why there are so many people who it's not for everybody. Like you said, it's not for everybody to charge high ticket prices, right? It's not for everybody to be an entrepreneur. It's certainly not for the faint of heart. It's a roller coaster, and it asks everything. And if you've got the mindset that can take that leap of faith, or believe in yourself enough to leave corporate America, Julie, or believe in yourself enough to start and found your own coaching practice, you can then create unlimited possibilities. But man, I'm not the only person on this show or who's listening to this who's wobbled and walked that fine line.
Well, you have to be willing to have a conversation that says, here's where I am. Here's where I want to be. So I'm here. I want to be here. And if somebody reaches out to me and they say they're a hair salon founder, they run a hair salon, and they say, hey, Chris, can you help me? I want to elevate my business. The first question I'm going to ask is what do you need? If you're here, say you're here at 300K and you want to get to 900K, the first question I'm going to ask is, what do you think you need to learn to get to 900K? What do you think you need to learn? Tell me, because what I think doesn't matter. What matters is, what do they think? What do they think they need to learn? They tell me, here's what I need. I need this. I need this. Tell me what's going on inside of your belief system, Heather, that's causing you to stay at 300,000 rather than being at 800,000. And then you're going to tell me. So I'm going to extract that right out of you. And it's not always the right answer. Isn't going to every single time. The right answer isn't create a high ticket package. The right answer is going to be tied into, what is it that you're currently believing that's holding you back? What is it that you need to learn to move the needle and move the ship? And where's your current level of resistance around learning it? And let's start to navigate that resistance. Because there is resistance, because the bottom line is, you want to be at 900 and you're at 300. There's something that's missing that's creating that gap, and we need to find out what it is. And that's what we uncover immediately on the enrollment call. And then once that comes out, I then determine if I'm the right person, because I'm not going to pitch you something that isn't going to get you where you want to go.
Well, you're a hammer. So you're telling me not everybody you talk to is a nail?
I don't even know what you mean by that.
You sell coaching. You're telling me that not everybody's an ideal coaching client for you?
No, not everybody's an ideal coaching client for me. It's like, we're going to do a call. That's why. And it's interesting because a lot of people, I think, preach that, but then they're willing to sell something no matter what. I'm not going to sell you a program that I don't think is going to move you, because it puts my credibility on the line. And I'm not willing to put my credibility into the tank so I can collect your money.
Yep. So you're saying you have a 100% success rate with someone who comes with clarity of vision and purpose, like Julie did, or like the other people you've worked with. Your 100% success rate comes from your 100% success rate to also filter people. I was just saying, a lot of people talk this talk, Chris, but you're telling me you would turn away if I said, here's $60,000, coach me, and you didn't think I was a good candidate? You'd tell me no?
No, because it's not worth the energetic exchange that's going to take place over 12 months. The energetic exchange that's going to take place is going to be so fucking draining for both of us. There's going to be a bigger opportunity cost lost for you and lost for me, more than that 60K could ever replenish. You see what I'm saying? If I'm talking,
and I always say some money is too expensive.
It's just like, I don't want to deal with that. And I don't think you want to deal with it either. So, we turn people down, but there's a reason for it. The bottom line is it isn't for everyone, but that's why it's an exploratory call. And that's why I asked a lot of questions, because I'm looking to go, hey, here's the gap. Am I the person? And if I'm not the person, I'm going to send you to who is, because I've been in this industry for 17 years. And if it's not me, I'm going to know somebody that can help you. I did that this morning. It's a great
segue to high ticket advantage. I got to tell you,
I quoted somebody this morning, and I was like, "This is all I got that would help you with this." And I knew it was well out of her range. And I said, "Here, I got a client there. Here, go talk to this person, because here's the investment. This is, it's $57 a month. And if you want something that's $57 a month, go over here. I'm not the guy." And she was so grateful. But again, that's just, you got to show up in service. It's not about the money.
Hey, business owners. Yes, you. I know you're juggling it all. Marketing, admin tasks, websites, podcasts, social media. The list never ends. That's where Spark comes in. We're a virtual assistant company built just for small business owners, because once you're able to delegate, we know you'll be able to dominate. Our clients are seeing up to 30% increase in social media engagement and sales, all by letting us handle the behind the scenes work. Not to mention an incredible boost in flexibility, profit, and time. So scan the QR code right now to schedule a free chat with my team. Let's make you efficient AF and help you focus on what you do best, growing and leading your business. Awesome. I love it. Okay. So this is the thing with your high ticket advantage. Julie, you have copywriter to the stars. We're not talking about you, Chris, but one of them. You bought this knack.
I wasn't a star until I met Julie, right?
There you go. You had this, you have this ability to understand how to create a high ticket offer, and then combining that with the belief, with the faith, and with the ability to bridge the gap between what ceiling you're keeping yourself at and then skyrocketing, right? So tell me a bit about how you developed the high ticket advantage, what that does for a client, or what the process is like. What does this mean, and how does it work?
Yeah, I'd love to share. So as a creative, I love to have other people really enjoying what they're doing. Like, let's build businesses we love. And yes, let's build businesses that are profitable. And the intersection of those two things is essentially your high ticket advantage. So your high ticket advantage is our word for niche, basically. And if you're a creative, let's just use creatives as an example. Maybe you're a hairstylist or you're an artist of some sort. The foundation of a high ticket advantage is staying within what I call your zone of genius. So your zone of genius in business, you could be a colorist. You could really focus on a certain style of haircut. You could focus on a certain color of hair, a certain demographic of client. It might be a certain service, like sequence or process that you've created, but there's this area of work that feels extremely energizing to you, and it feels almost effortless. There might be a creative challenge, but it actually feels like there's an effortless, frictionless experience when you're doing the thing that you're so damn good at, that you're the only one who does it this way. And when we build businesses, or we have this underlying feeling like we need to make money, which is true. We need to pay our bills. We need to stay afloat. And there's like a scarcity through line that makes us dilute our expertise and dilute our zone of genius and say, well, I can't just color blondes. I mean, I have to also do haircuts and blow dries and all this stuff. And I have to also cut men and children, like all of this is thrown in to try to make it more valuable. But the best businesses, the best and the happiest creatives that I've ever met are working in their zone of genius 80 to 90% of the time. And when you're doing that, we actually teach this concept called charging the most for what comes easiest. People think because it's easy, everyone should be able to do this, or a lot of stylists just do what I do. But it's actually completely false. I believe every human being on this planet is a genius at something. And when you're in that zone, you can feel it, and you're fucking confident. You're excited. You're powerful. You're brazen and bold, right? And you feel this confidence. So really knowing the what you offer, and staying in that zone of genius and taking that and applying it to a market who can truly appreciate like the nuances of that genius and who are willing to pay 10 times the market average for that genius because of the impact. Like it could be their passion. Maybe it's just their passion for hair, for example. And they love, like they think of their hair as their best accessory, and they love that you specialize in like brunettes with balayage or something. And they're like, you are the person who gets me. They're willing to pay more for it because of that. So the high ticket advantage is you working in your zone of genius, applying it to an audience that is really, really motivated to pay for that genius, and marrying that with a very distinctive reason that you help your clients better than anyone else. So this is kind of like your secret sauce, like what makes you completely unique and different. And these three components together create your high ticket advantage. And when we help clients position themselves, like we have this gorgeous client, Bridget, for example, you asked for an example. She was a top 200 salon owner for 13 years. And then she went on this journey to become a coach because she fell in love with personal transformation and what it did in her own life. So she became a coach and she started working in that field. And when she came to us, she was like, something's just not gelling and clicking. She was making money and everything was fine, but it wasn't like explosive growth. It wasn't like lighting her up. You know, it was just kind of this vanilla mixture of different offers, and it wasn't really targeted for anybody. So when I looked at her whole background and her whole history, I realized that she had this like expertise and experience in the salon industry as a salon CEO. And now she has this mastery in NLP and hypnosis, timeline therapy, all of these things that can truly transform a business owner's mindset. And we marry those together to create a high ticket advantage of helping salon owners become a top 200 salon and create a self-led salon, a team that is like taking initiative and selling and working and is drama free. And we created this distinctive messaging around your mindset being really the differentiator between a salon that's kind of average and one that's a top 200 salon. So we marry these two together so that she's working in her zone of genius. She's not teaching business systems. She's not teaching all of this other stuff. She's focused on her coaching and her NLP and timeline therapy and everything, but she's creating a massive distinction for her clients. And it's like her whole business is just re-energized and way more profitable. And she's just really growing. It's exciting.
So it sounds like the more or less, kind of formula you describe is to really hone in on your zone of genius. And I love how, because I think a lot of us have heard that term bounced around, or if we're in any type of business or growth, but I love how you said, charge the most for what comes easiest. Like, I think, like, I just want to spotlight that moment, charge the most for what comes easiest. I think that that's such a good thing to pause on. And for people who are listening, no matter what it is they're doing, to really meditate on what comes the easiest to you and why the heck aren't you charging a ton for it? Like you mentioned, this beautiful client of yours who could go ahead and lead workshop on business systems or how to do this or that, or probably hairstyling because she's a stylist. No, she wanted to do something, you helped her hone in on something very specific. And I think that's so, so powerful. I'd love to know between either of you, what tips you have or what kind of breakthroughs you can offer when someone's looking at positioning themselves in the closing of a deal, no matter what the deal is, in a sales call or something else like that. What are things that they can do or questions they can ask that aren't going to make them feel too salesy or cheesy? You know what I mean? A lot of us, I think, again, the creative and the helping field, especially because so many of the people that I work with through my various channels of work are in the helping fields. They're in a caring field. They're in a personal service, high touch, creative field. So we're not salespeople. We don't want to be forceful. You get all this like, well, as I teach classes across the country, I educate. That's the thing I love to do. It comes so easily for me. I don't realize I'm doing it. I'm starting to have my wheels spin thinking, why am I not charging so much money to teach people? Because it's the easiest thing I do. I'm great at hair. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm pretty good at it. There's 100 great hairdressers within a stone's throw of me as we speak, and let alone across the country. But not all of them can teach like I can teach. So, ideas are percolating, right? But my question is, as I'm teaching across the country, almost every salon I go to, so I'm thinking that this could probably copy and paste to a lot of our listeners of any field or profession. And a lot of them say, right, but I don't want to be salesy. Do you guys get that from your clients no matter what it is they're doing? But I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to be pushy. That's a lot of money. How do we break through that?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I could talk on that for an hour.
Well, I will point something out. I want to just point something out. One of the things that I pay really close attention to language, because language is very revealing. What you just said was, I'm having my little spin. Or my little spin. So
my head is spinning like, ooh, the wheels are going. You got the gears going.
Is your little spin? Does a powerful woman who's worth $2 million a year have a little spin?
I think a tsunami just launched and the earthquake happened. And
I'm just saying, it's like, it's bigger than that. Because you're bigger than that. You see what I'm saying? It's bigger than that.
Julius, they coach me live on Brazen and Bold, which actually, hey, listen, I'm okay with being in the hot seat. I like it. I don't feel like I'm in the hot seat, but I'm like, let's talk about this for 3 hours. Yeah. Chris, great point. You have my permission to go full force on this because I think this will help our listeners.
Yeah, but think about the mindset behind I'm having my little spin, which basically has an underlying tone that says I'm little. You're not little. You're big. You're big. You're powerful beyond measure. And it's like, and that's part of it. It's like bringing this into your consciousness. And I'm not trying to like nitpick anybody, but it's more like, hey, that's part of a belief system that it will cause a person not to fully step into their value completely. You see what I'm saying? Even if, and Heather, I know you're not struggling, you're doing fantastic, but wherever you're at, the next level is available, but part of that next level is believing that you're there. It's part of it. And in terms of questions, Julie, I feel like it would be more powerful to have a woman answer that question around salesy. So, I can sit here. I have a million answers to that question, but I want Julie to answer it. I'm just trusting my intuition and saying, Julie, why don't you answer that question?
Yeah. The answer is in the question. Like when they don't want to be salesy, that's the answer right there. So what I learned from Chris and what I implemented into my own selling is a lot of the value is unsaid. So you come into the conversation with total conviction that you can get this person an incredible results. You're only focused on the results. You're not focused on yourself. You're not focused on convincing or proving your value or anything like that. You're like, my value is not up for negotiation. It's not on the table. I'm here as like a dynamic force of nature coming into your life, your business, whatever. And I'm here to serve you and help you get the result that you want. So before I worked with Chris, I would come to the call like, hey, Heather, oh my God. So thank you so much for meeting with me. Can you tell me about you and tell me a little bit about what you need? It was very tentative and I was being deferent to the person I was talking to. Now I'd be like, Heather, I'm so excited to chat. I cannot wait to hear all about your business. Let's start out with tell me a little bit about your goals over the next 6 to 12 months. So I would come in confident and ready to hear about what you need. And you're leading with questions and you're really all about the transformation. You're asking deeper questions and you're taking them from where they are now to where they want to be. So if someone is feeling afraid of being salesy, the most important thing to know is that when you're afraid of being salesy, your attention is on yourself. How am I going to be perceived? How are they going to take this? Are they going to feel like I'm trying to do anything to them? And no, what you're doing is you want to be helping them to get clear on their needs and desires. And that's the purpose. That's the whole purpose of the sales conversation. So I'm really focused on that and I'm not focused on myself. I'm totally detached. This client can say yes, or they can say, give me the finger and get the heck out of here. I'm not really concerned about that. I'm just I'm here to serve you and I'm here to find out if I can be of service. That's my secret mindset trick.
One of the things that we always say, Heather, is we ask questions not so we know what they need. We ask questions so they know what they need. So when I ask somebody, about a problem and they tell me they have this problem, and I say, what's your life going to be like in 6 months if that's not solved? And they go, if I don't solve this problem, here's what's going to happen. Oftentimes they haven't thought about that before. So now that question is building urgency for them to move forward. I remember one of the stories I tell on a regular basis is I asked that question to a laundry CEO. She was in the commercial laundry business, and she was dealing with overwhelm and burnout. And I said, if we don't solve this problem, what's likely going to happen? And she said, Chris, if I don't solve this problem, I'm likely going to miss my daughter's first steps because I'm going to be in this warehouse. She hadn't thought about the fact that if she didn't change her trajectory, she might miss her daughter's first steps. That question, now she's comparing spending that money with me to missing her daughter's first steps. Do you think that's a compelling reason to make a purchase? And that didn't come out because I convinced her. It didn't come out because I said, I'm so valuable that I'm going to make sure you don't miss your daughter's first steps. It's ridiculous. I just simply asked a question, but it was a very strategic question. It was the right question. And you have to, no matter what you're selling, the urgency to have the thing has to exceed the risk of the purchase. And if that doesn't happen during the enrollment, then you're not going to, it doesn't matter. It's not going to happen. If I'm asking a person to spend $50,000 with me, I need to get their urgency above how it feels for them to spend $50K. It needs to be more urgent than the risk of spending the $50K. And if I haven't learned how to do that, then they're not going to spend $50K with me. You know what I mean? That's the bottom line. And that's part of what we're teaching is how do you do that? But you don't do it by getting on and preaching value. You don't preach your value. You ask questions. And then from those questions, they'll end up either seeing your value or not seeing your value. Those that don't see your value won't hire you, but that's okay. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm valuable. I'm going to ask you questions, and you're either going to see my value or not.
You know, and I think the ability to ask those questions, like both of you said, that is a really composite and complete picture of how to enter any type of sales. We're all in sales. We're all selling ourselves somehow. But, you know, Julie, the resistance to being, I don't want to be salesy. Well, then don't be salesy. Go solve someone's problems. That's it. I'm a servant. I'm here to help you find the missing components. And in this, you know, as you mentioned, like your cute little demo of, hi, it's so good to see you. Like this little, you know, I can imagine the Julie pre-Chris of, oh, I'm so glad you made time for me to like, I cannot wait to see where we're going to build your business in 12 months. Tell me more about you. I mean, just the energy behind those two, the juxtaposition of that is great. And, you know, in that, to Chris's point, you were like, here's who I've written copy for. Here's the income I've generated. Here's why I'm such a talented copywriter. I am very important. Do you understand how important I am? Look at my importance. You just feel in the energy of what you have to offer. Get out of your own way. And then as Chris says, I'm going to ask you a compelling question that highlights in some way your own energetic pain point around what do I have to lose and what do I stand to lose if I don't put myself out there in this way, whether it's saying yes to something so simple or a massive high ticket offer. You know, you give them that by asking those questions, getting out of your own way. And I think a lot of us have been in, and I don't know about either of you. Have you guys been in calls, meetings, or conferences and workshops where by the time someone's done giving their own bio and accolades, you want to like roll over? You're kind of like, no, right? And thinking like some of it is very impressive, but maybe one of you will remember who said, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. I don't know, maybe it's a Maxwell quote, but some guy in leadership basically, nobody really cares how impressive you are unless that impressiveness is going to get me out of this thing I'm uncomfortable about. Why am I sitting on this call? Why am I sitting in this meeting, this workshop, reading this book, listening to this podcast? What thing is it that that I'm so uncomfortable about I want to change? And how is your unique skill set, your zone of genius, going to elevate me and help me break through? You know what I mean? Like, I think that that's so pivotal no matter what it is you're doing and what kind of clients you work with or what kind of business you have and how you serve. And I think this is transferable as well into a lot of areas. You know, Julie, like you mentioned, I think you have a little daughter. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right? We're parents and you share this daughter now, right? As you've revealed to the audience that you are partners in life as well. You know, this sounds like the kind of thing that would also work in a parenting relationship. This sounds like a principle, a values-based principle that would be transferable to pretty much any relationship. Am I wrong?
Yeah, so spot on. It's so good, especially talking. I have a teenager, so she's 15 and almost 16 in a couple months. And she, you know, anytime I need her to change something about her behavior, I'm always coming at it from what's her perspective. You know, teenagers love to have messy rooms. They love to nest, you know. If I want her to clean her room, what's in it for her? You know, what is she going to get out of it? What is her goal, and how am I going to help her get to her goal if she, you know, cleans that room?
We just created a very simple rule around the room. I mean, you know, sometimes a little bit of masculine helps. The simple rule is if I go into your room after you've left for your friend's house and your room is absolutely trashed, you know, you're not going to be allowed to leave the house again until your room is cleaned. That's it. And you can leave the house tomorrow or you can leave the house in 2 weeks. I don't really care, but you're not leaving until the room's clean. That's it. And now there's no question. There's no weirdness. She knows the room is trashed. Guess what she does? She cleans the room. Because she knows that if I walk in there and the damn room is trashed, she's going to be ordered to come home and she's not going to be allowed to leave the house until the room is clean. So what's in it for her? She doesn't have to answer to me. She gets what she wants. She gets to hang out with her friends. She gets to be a teenager and do her thing, have her girlfriends to her house. They get to eat Doritos in the bed. You know, they get to do all that because that's what she wants to do. And I don't care if you want to eat Doritos in the bed. Just don't leave the bag all over the floor and leave the chip crumbs all over the floor. You know, we can have a 40-year conversation about this, or we can have a 2-second conversation about this. And here's the rule, and you're either going to live by it or you're not, and that's up to you. So she chooses to stay within that rule. And I'm not rude to her about it. It's just a very direct, clean, energetic exchange between her and I. The room needs to be clean. If it's not clean, you're not going to be allowed to leave the house. That's it. And she goes, okay. And that's it.
And you've attached this standard of living in your home with something that she values, I'm guessing, which would be leaving her space, leaving her house.
I'm not going in and ravaging through her shit. She has her privacy. That is her space. It is her room. But I always give her the chance to, you know, express it. And she does really well with clear boundaries. I just think that the boundaries actually are good for her.
Who do you know in existence, Julie or Chris, that does not do well with clear communication and clear boundaries?
I don't know anybody that doesn't. And we resist putting those in place because we're concerned about what they're going to think about us.
Right. And back to the beginning of the conversation when we talked about the ego is the preservation of current self. It's how we're all alive and not obliterated. If you understand anything about ego, it's not a thing to be destroyed or get rid of, but it's a thing to understand, work with, and evolve. But you think about it, if we're conditioned to maintain the status quo for the preservation of our own life and well-being, the last thing we want to do is rock a boat or put ourselves out there in a way that's going to challenge the status quo. And this just ties in, I think, to the conversation at the beginning, which is if we have clarity around what we stand to lose, if we don't rock the boat, if we don't take a look at our bank account and realize we only have $50 left in it and choose to, I would say this is not, you could say like, well, she really went out on a limb. That Julie, she stepped out on a limb. I'm like, no, Julie flung herself buck naked off of a cliff with no end in sight is what Julie did. No parachute, no water, no trampoline, no safety net, nada. That girl ran full send and sailed off a cliff. So there's a lot of reasons for one to not do this. If I'm not mistaken, it does sound like the obliteration and absolute annihilation of everything we know that has preserved us as it is. But when we can couple that with clear communication, clear boundaries, and I love how
if you want to have what most people don't have, you have to be willing to do what most people won't do. It's as simple as that. If you want to have what most people don't have, you have to be willing to do what most people don't do. The top 1% in our industry is a 300K person, and they behave like the top 1%. That means they behave differently than 99% of the population. And if you really want to be in the 1%, you have to behave like the 1%. If you want to be a 7-figure entrepreneur, you have to behave like a 7-figure entrepreneur. And what that means is you have to be willing to step into what 7-figure entrepreneurs do. And you have to start doing it before you're a 7-figure entrepreneur, because it's the doing of those types of things that will bring you to 7 figures, if that's your desire and that's your goal.
Right. And if your desire and goal, because I think that this is fair and valid, there are many people listening or in existence who are like, my goal is not 7 figures. My goal is a healthier life, more sleep and more rest, a better relationship that's more connected with my 15-year-old daughter, which I have as well. My goal in life is just to know that I can be there for my parents as they age, right? It doesn't really matter what your goal is. There's something that stands in the way of our ability to execute that. And I think the questions that you two are able to ask, the way you're able to pose it and phrase it, and also just even in this organic conversation today, I think it's really cool to see when someone wants to rise to that challenge and answer those difficult questions, the kind of expansion that can be unlocked when there's trust in themselves, a belief that there's something bigger. Again, maybe it's not a dollar amount. Maybe it's just something else that indicates freedom or well-being, but sounds like an invaluable combo.
It's very valuable. And we run it. We always tell people we run a freedom first business. You know, our core values, fortunately, we share similar core values. Love and freedom are our core most important business or values in life, love and freedom. So we're not going to build a business that takes away our ability to love and provide love. And we're not going to build a business that takes away our freedom. No amount of money is worth taking away our freedom. So if we're elevating and elevating and elevating, but all we're doing is working, all we're doing is work. That's out of alignment for us. And that's what we want to teach people is my gosh, we're going to look at your values. What do you want? Bottom line. Because like you said, not everybody wants 7 figures, but somebody might want 500K or they might want 300K depending on where they are. But most people think like if you're making 100 and you want to make 300, it'd be very easy to think that you have to work 3 times as hard to make 300 as you are to make 100. And if you're already overwhelmed and burned out at 100, you're going to think, oh my God, going to 300 is going to paralyze me. But it's not, but it's not true. That's an incorrect statement. There's work that needs doing, but making 300 isn't 3 times as hard as making 100. That's just not true.
And actually, based on what Julie's described, if you're not watching this and you're just listening, you'll see how absolutely radiant and stunning Julie is, not just in her physical appearance, but in her presence. I don't imagine you're even a fraction of the burnout that you had when you were producing in the 90 to 100,000 a year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It sounds like, sometimes actually costs you more to stay where you're at. Some money is too expensive. Like Julie said, some money costs way too much, right? Or some payment is not worth the money. I would love to know just from each of you, what kind of closing thoughts you have for somebody who's listening in, regardless of their status in their business, their personal life, if they're in coaching. What is something that you would like to offer our listeners that you think would provide them the greatest amount of transformation and meaning based on these incredible principles and thoughts that you've both shared?
Well, mine is, especially as a creative, when I was really struggling in business, I made that mean that my creative skill wasn't very good. And what I want every creative to know who listens to this is that your creativity is a totally separate thing from your ability to sell your services or enroll clients. And the importance of keeping those two things separate. Selling is a skill you can learn. Creativity is its own thing. And your value is not determined by how much money you make.
All right. Thank you, Julie. How about you, Chris?
I would just say bet on yourself. Be willing to make the bet on yourself, which means whether it's us or it's a different mentor, if there's something that you want that has been elusive to you, I would say be willing to bet on yourself and hire somebody that has done what it is that you want to do. The thing that's hard to watch is the amount of times that people hire someone that hasn't done what they want to do. It's like, to me, it's like, it's a terrible mistake to make. You know what I mean? If you want a 7-figure business, would you please hire somebody that has a goddamn 7-figure business and stop hiring people that don't? I mean, honestly, this seems so logical, but you're not going to slide into the cheapest possible program to teach you how to make $1 million. Whatever it is, if it's self-esteem you want to build, if it's confidence you want to build, if it's revenue you want to build, if it's whatever it is, find somebody that has done what you want to do and please bring them in to your team, have them be part of your process. And that's my advice, whether it's me or it's someone else. But God, take the gamble on yourself. I'm sitting in this room having created what I've created because very early on in business, I took a big risk and I hired a high ticket mentor. And I learned in 4.5 years of high ticket mentorship, stuff that I still learn today. That I hired this guy from 2008 to 2013. I was paying $80,000 a year, but that changed my life. And I didn't have the $80,000. I took the risk. You know what I mean? It's like, so please bet on yourself with mentorship and find somebody that's created what it is that you want to create.
Yeah. I've heard people say, don't take advice from someone who's not having the results that you want. And that's a very similar kind of concept. But let's not judge our creativity or consider that our creativity and our ability to sell is a reflection of how good we are at our craft. And bet on yourself. The two of you have both bet on yourselves in big ways and produced massive wins, not only individually for your own lives, but for the lives of all the people that you have helped coach, write copy for, and helped guide through this process using the framework that you've set up in Self-Made. And I'm so appreciative that you shared these takeaways with our audience, let us into a little bit of your world, and also have helped us see how many of these ideas could impact a lot of areas of our lives and multiple professions. Thank you both so much for joining us. I can't wait to hear your feedback on this show to all of the listeners. And we will definitely link in the show notes where you can find Chris and Julie and reach out to them if you have any questions and get to know a little bit more about their work. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks.